Welcome everyone to this webinar brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Bitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national, strategic, security-oriented policies. Our movement consists of more than 20,000 people here in Israel, including many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense Establishment, who believe that strong national security and staunch Zionism are necessary for Israel to be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. Thank you so much to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into these war briefings. It is very important to us at IDSF that we have the opportunity to bring these very real, candid briefings to you each day of this war. We are joined right now by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of IDSF, who will provide our briefing for today, as well as Jessica Barazani, who is going to share some critical updates about the really important work that our movement is doing here in Israel. General, we'll start with you. Please, what can you share with us?
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. At the moment, talking about what's going on in Gaza, the IDF is really attacking fiercely the areas of Jabalia and Sajaya. This is basically the last strongholds of Hamas in northern Gaza. Many Hamas operatives are surrendering. We apprehended in the last months around 500 terrorists who surrendered. And this is not talking about all the terrorists that were killed, and also many civilians that are going out and surrendering. So I would say it's a matter maybe of a week, maybe a bit more, until there will be control of the northern part of Gaza. It doesn't mean that it's completely cleaned from terrorists, certainly not infrastructure, but it means that the main forces of Hamas in the north were destroyed as organizations and are not functioning. At the same time, our forces are working in Khan Yunis. Khan Yunis is in the southern part of Gaza. The two main areas in the south are Khan Yunis and Rafah. Khan Yunis is the biggest city. It's usually where the leadership of Hamas is. I don't know if they stay there or not, but the IDF has fierce fighting there, but moving forward all the time. And also, it will probably take a few weeks to take over Khan Yunis. Having said that, we're not operating on the ground in all the center of Gaza. In the what we call the camps of the center, the El Balach, Jabalia, not Jabalia, the El Balach, Nuseirat, Burej, this area, and also we're not operating in Rafah. To me, I must say frankly, and I'm really into the details, it's not really clear what will happen afterwards. I think the IDF is looking at what's happening now to see if this is a kind of breaking point of Hamas. It's something that it's difficult to predict. It will have to wait and see. And then, really, according to what we see on the ground, really decide what to do in the next phase, which is not really clear at the moment. I can say that the pressure from the US is growing steadily. I would say to the point that might endanger the whole war. There's a lot of pressure not to continue and expand the war, and this is very dangerous for Israel. And I don't know how exactly the government is going to cope with this pressure. To me, at the moment, things are looking complicated. I'm a bit less optimistic than what I was until now. And this is a moment, I think, where in the US, from the Jewish communities, and also here in Israel, we have to really put serious pressure on both governments to get the job done. we cannot have a reality where Hamas stays on its feet. This is not only a huge problem in the south, it's also going to impact all our security everywhere else. I think it's going also to affect the citizens that need to go back to their homes, and they need to go to a place where Hamas was destroyed. So we will find ourselves probably in the coming week launching a campaign in all of Israel to really make sure that we don't surrender to pressure and we do what we need to do with all the complexities that we are experiencing at the moment. If things in Gaza, there are really question marks where all this is going. In the north, it's even more complicated. At the moment, exchanges of fire are continuing all the time with Hezbollah. But the government, unlike the south, where they set a clear goal of destroying Hamas, in the north, we don't have any goals. I mean, there is an Israeli pressure saying it's either going to be war or withdrawal of Hezbollah from South Lebanon. So there is some kind of diplomatic exchange, but what will happen when will the citizens of the north will be able to go home, to what reality they are going to come back? It seems to me very unclear at the moment, and it becomes more unclear when the war in Gaza is not clear. And when are we going to finish with this? We are talking to the top echelon of the government and the army, trying to advise and help and assist in really taking things to the right direction. But I think these coming weeks, especially until the end of December, beginning of January, are going to be very decisive, talking about where all this war is going to. And we must be really strong here and make sure that things are done the right way. So this is what's going on at the moment. Moshe, let's go to the next step, and then we'll give time for questions.
Thank you so much, General Avivi. So if anyone has any questions, we'll take them momentarily. Please, of course, feel free to send them into the chat, or many people send me emails prior to the briefing, so we'll try to cover those. And right now we're going to go to Jessica Barazani, who does amazing things here in Israel on behalf for our movement, helping out so many segments of society. Please, Jessica, tell everyone what you are doing really to support this war effort.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you. So, of course, the IDSF has been involved in many fronts of the war, whether it's our, people in our main staff that are currently in the reserves, or it's us, some of us behind the scenes who are doing other things. We're all very busy at this time. I'm sure many of you have heard about the copious amounts of equipment we have fundraised for and bought and supplied to the soldiers on the battlefield currently. So that's one thing that the organization is doing. Another thing that we're doing is we're looking to help the families of those whose wives or husbands have been in the reserves since October 7th, and there's one less person in the house helping with kids and family affairs and whatnot. So we have a project going that women of the households can reach out to us and tell us about any urgent issues they're having, whether it's, the washing machine broke down, or the door to their safe room doesn't close properly, anything that really affects their day-to-day life or their safety, they reach out to us, and we provide them with a proper professionals to come fix their problem. And it's all volunteer based. So it helps the family, it helps the women, and it also helps the men who are out there in the reserves know that there's someone looking after their families at home for them. So that's one project that we're really working on. Another thing that we did was there's a lot of soldiers currently in Gaza who they're not allowed to bring in their cell phones, so they've had no connection for weeks on end with their families back home. So we started a project where people can send us either typed or handwritten letters that they want to send to their sons or husbands or whoever it may be. And using our connections, we took in those letters and dispersed them amongst the soldiers from their families. So we're just, we're trying to also really look out for the families at this time, because it is a very trying time for the soldiers as well as for the families at home who feel disconnected and worried about the soldiers during this time. Another very important thing that we're doing now is, as some of you may know, there's a very large population of citizens here in Israel who are currently displaced. They are staying in hotels or hostels or kibbutzim, anything of the like, whether they're from the north or from the south and have been evacuated by the government to safer parts of Israel during this kind of time of war. And so this has left a lot of the displaced citizens confused as to when they're going to be going home. What does the day after the war going to look like for them? How can they ensure that this doesn't happen again? How can they ensure that their yeshuvim, their communities, their kibbutzim are going to be protected and secure from now on? Because obviously they're going to be living with some kind of fear that this whole thing doesn't repeat itself. So because IDSF is built up of so many experts in the field of security, whether it's, people who have served in the army or the Mossad or the Shabak, they have a deep understanding of what it is needs to happen to secure these places and what it is that needs to be demanded of our government to make sure that these things don't happen again. There are also the kind of watch communities in each one of these communities that are near Gaza and Judea and Samaria. And they're the first responders when there's a threat on the specific community. And these volunteer watch-based communities really need to be also strengthened at this time, both with equipment and with knowledge and overall preparedness for these situations. So what the IDSF, our organization, is doing is we're sending our professional experts in to speak with these communities and explaining to them what it's going to look like after the war, what their general area they live in is going to be like, what they need to ask for from the government in order to feel more secure, in order to feel less neglected than they did up until now. Because we really have the knowledge, while there's so many people so many organizations going out there and talking about pro-Israel and advocating, that's great and super important. But here we're really honing in on these citizens who are left with so many questions and with no home, and what do they need to do to prop themselves back up? That's where our expertise has really come in hand, and that's what we're looking to do now, is to reach as many of those communities as possible to speak to them.
Jessica, amazing. Thank you so much. A number of people were asking, so I just want to clarify. Jessica works tirelessly for IDSF. So Jessica is not representing another organization. Everyone's saying, oh, what is this organization? This is IDSF. People understand we do many things, mostly here in Israel. We don't just give these briefings. General Avivi and many of our leaders are in the Knesset all the time, meeting with high-ranking officials, doing all things across Israel. and we have a robust movement. And Jessica is making sure that this movement is mobilized and activated to support this war effort. And resilience among the Israeli population is critical for the people to say we want to fight this to the end. And that is what Jessica is doing. She's providing all of these services through the context of our organization, IDSF, to make sure we can support our soldiers, support the families in the war. So Jessica, thank you so much for sharing all of that amazing work. We're going to go back now to General Avivi. And General, many questions have come in. A lot of people are asking, is there a good way of accessing data and information about this war? So I'll just use this as an advertising opportunity. Everyone should know our website. And in addition to our general website of IDSF, we have an Israel War database that we put up a week or so ago that has gone out in our newsletter. I'm going to share a link in our chat. If you have not yet seen the Israel War database, it is very worthwhile to review. There's an amazing amount of content there, constantly being updated about this war. Okay, question for you, General. In terms of the potential waning support of the U.S. for this war, what is the main issue? What can people back in the States, what can people do when they contact their congressmen or their senators or their local media? Do they talk about the humanitarian crisis? Do they talk about Hamas's ruthless activities? Do they talk about how the West is next? Like, what would you say is the main talking point?
I would say that we started this war all committed to the destruction of Hamas, and we need to destroy Hamas. If we don't destroy Hamas, Israel will be in very grave danger, and not only Israel, the whole West. If the tipping spear of the West cannot destroy an organization like Hamas decisively, this is going to empower the whole Muslim radical movement, the old organizations, and they are not going to just attack Israel, they're going to attack the whole West. And if the West is trying to stop Israel from winning, we saw what happened in the UN resolution. 100 countries called for a ceasefire. Ceasefire means calling for Israel to lose, to not get the job done, to not destroy Hamas. Now, the point is that when you prolong the existence of Hamas, you also prolong the suffering of its own society. I mean, the only way to really be able to go to some normality in the Gaza Strip and maybe talk about reconstruction is destroying Hamas as soon as possible, and not starting to operate in a way that might take a year or two, and then the suffering of the society will also be long. So even looking at it from a humanitarian point of view, it doesn't make sense. We need to get the job done, and we need to really mobilize our divisions and finish the job. And I think there should be a huge pressure on the Congress, the Senate, media, the administration, to give Israel all the tools and support it needs to win the war.
There's, of course, a big question mark about the day after the war, what Israel will do. Do you think the U.S. support is partly contingent on Israel having an answer to that question?
Might be. I mean, we know that we view things differently. The administration wants like a two-state solution. And I must say that even if they want that and it's not in Israel's best interest, you still need to destroy Hamas. I mean, there is no point talking about the day after, because the day after is the day after destruction of Hamas. And if this day is not going to happen anytime soon, then it will be very hard to talk about the day after. So I think that the day after has two aspects. It has a military aspect. We need, in order to prevent the buildup of Hamas again, we need to control the Egyptian border. We need freedom of operation. And for this, you cannot gain freedom of operation in Gaza without taking over the Gaza Strip and dismantling all the terror infrastructure that they have there. And this takes time, and we need to do it really in a decisive way.
An important question just came in. The civilian population of Gaza voted in Hamas. So the day that this war ends in Gaza, how does Israel clean up, so to speak, the Gazan population?
I think that there will be a need to deal with the whole education system. I think there is a need to dismantle UNRWA, which is maybe the one organization that is assisting to perpetuate the refugee status of Palestinians and educate them to hate Israel and Jews. We need a completely different education system, and it's not going to be short. Changing the mentality of a society is something that is very long term.
Okay, let's go to a little bit of a different question. There has been a lot of reports about Israeli soldiers dying of friendly fire. Are you able to just explain what that is? Is that normal in wartime? Meaning, what does all of that mean for us?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that almost 1/5 of the soldiers that were hurt or died, it was for friendly fire. I think that the environment in Gaza is very complicated, a very complicated war. And you see terrorists popping from different places, and you are working in a very difficult environment. And also, we have to remember the IDF. You have many reservists. It's not their everyday job to fight. Civilians who come and serve and have a few weeks of training before they go to war. And then you have young soldiers, 19 years old, also they're not that experienced. And this is an army's people. And therefore, also the inexperience and the complicated arena, this affects these issues. The IDF is doing a lot to try to minimize that, trying to get lessons learned passed from different units in a way that everybody understands how to fight the right way, how to avoid this kind of mistakes, but still it happens.
So on tomorrow's briefing, we have Yoram Ettinger, who is an expert on U.S.-Israel relationships. I'm going to ask them this question as well, but one of our viewers just wrote in, why is it that the U.S. seems to be promoting the Palestinian Authority to be the obvious choice to rule Gaza? Do they not have an understanding of who and what the Palestinian Authority is?
So I think that the overall sentiment, and even for many Israelis, is that this is the less terrible option. I mean, everybody understands that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad or ISIS is not a good idea. And then people need some solution. And then they say, okay, if we have no solution, this is maybe the only solution we can have. And the truth of the matter is that there are other solutions. And we don't need to rely on a terror organization devoted to the destruction of Israel. We can have other solutions that based, for example, on local clans that can run the cities, just like the Emirates in the United Emirates, city-states. There are solutions, and we need to find a new solution. We cannot rely on terrorists to really stop the buildup of terror infrastructure.
In the beginning of our briefing today, you mentioned that there are no clear goals set out on the northern border with Hezbollah. Are you able to elaborate on that? How can that be that the state or the IDF didn't set out goals?
Well, the government set goals for war only in Gaza. So we know what was said. and we're hoping the government will really stick to the goals it said. But in Lebanon, we basically said we are on the defense while we're on in Gaza. And the government is saying we are not going to have the same reality in the north as before. We need security for the citizens. But okay, but what are the goals? Is the goal to make sure that there will be no terrorists in South Lebanon? You can set a goal like that. You can achieve that by war. You can achieve that by implementing Resolution 1701, but there needs to be a clear statement what Israel wants. And this is something that at the moment, I think on purpose, the government is not deciding that. They want to finish first with Gaza. But now, if Gaza is not going to happen fast, it makes things even more difficult to what will happen in the north. So I met with several groups of citizens from the north in different hotels in the last week. And people are asking, what will happen with us? And I felt a lot of discomfort, really not having any serious answer to give them. I really don't know. It's not clear.
Okay, again, thank you so much for everyone who is submitting all of the questions. Very important. Well, the last question is the Houthis and the Red Sea shipping channels. It seems to be a small part of the story right now in terms of this war, but do you see that could escalate and create a real supply chain issue here in Israel?
I cannot live with the reality that the Houthis are closing the movement of ships in the Red Sea. I heard today that already Israeli warships are in the Red Sea on the way to the region, and we need to, together with the Americans, to be able to secure these routes and make sure that the ships can move freely, and there is and our economy is not affected by this reality.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for this very informative briefing. Jessica Barazani, thank you for sharing with all of our viewers and supporters what IDSF is doing on the ground in Israel. And of course, to all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in. We will see you again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. A very important briefing in the participation of Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, who's going to talk about the U.S.-Israel relationship. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay strong, stay safe, take care.